Hello, John Metalonic here at Oregon Hang Gliding School. The purpose of this multi-part video production is to provide a basic foot launch ground school that will assist you and your certified instructor teach you how to hang glide. Okay, I'll be providing the ground school in manageable chunks. Hopefully I'll integrate them later in one long video. But for now, you'll have the option of watching whichever interests you. Again, a disclaimer. This information must be used in conjunction with a certified instructor or school so they can supervise and assist you in learning how to fly safely. But first, a little bit about myself. I first got interested in hang gliding way back in the 5th grade in 1974. The reason being, it was all over television, news, radio. It had become a spectacular fad, and of course I was only 12, so I couldn't really act on anything besides searching for more information. So I went to the Detroit Public Library and I took out the book, and it was actually a little pamphlet about this thin, and now the book is this thick, okay, and so you can see how much evolution has gone on in this sport. Now there's so many other materials that you could be collecting in order for you to learn. For instance, that whole library behind me involves engineering and weather and towing techniques, and so there's just a whole lot to know. So it's our responsibility now to teach you all this, because now we don't want to repeat the bad old days of trial and error and people breaking their legs and arms and necks and irrational exuberance. Okay, so it took me graduating from college to actually get into hang gliding, because I needed to be not living paycheck to paycheck. Hang gliding is a middle-class sport, akin to buying a real good motorcycle or ATV or something like that. Okay, you can't be dangerously frugal in the sport, because I guarantee you it will bite you with either personal injury, extensive equipment damage, or both. Funny how those things go together, or just emotional trauma and anxiety from confusion of not knowing exactly what you should be doing. But that said, with the right help and supervision and assistance from your instructors and me, and the extensive video libraries that I've developed and textbooks, we can integrate all those physical, emotional, intellectual aspects that'll take you to become a self-reliant, independent hang glider pilot. Okay, so the series of videos, there'll come a time when it's best watched with somebody else, because I'm going to have you do an interactive exercise, that is, with a prop, say a broomstick, to duplicate a part of the glider called the down tube. So, another person, a partner in crime, and this broomstick, and we can start doing some interactive, real teaching of you the feelings of what it is to fly. Okay, so this ground school is going to go over 4 topics. First of all, history, back in the 19th century, early 20th century, and even about 50 years ago at the start of the modern hang gliding development. There's some key lessons there. In fact, probably the most important lessons of this whole ground school. Then we're going to go over aerodynamics, some physics of the way the glider works, because we're going to be changing that physics with our technique, and a strategy for your first day training and perhaps the whole program. And of course, communication, because we have to be closer to perfection than most things in learning how to hang glide. If you hear go when we say no, that could be a problem. Okay, in fact, let's start with communication, because we have so much to learn in hang gliding. It behooves us to kind of collect as much information as possible in our endeavor. Now, if there's one thing I've learned over the decades of teaching hang gliding is that one can't fully develop your skills in any restricted set of conditions. You know, the world is full of mountains and coasts and deserts and towing situations and particular strategies and techniques, and you have to be willing to expose yourself to them all, okay, to actually master this sport. Now, the school at which we're learning probably has made a couple compromises to make the program as consistently invariable as possible so that you can see some progress, okay? But in a sense, those compromises make it an ideal a set of conditions that will not prepare you, you know, for flying in another part of the country or another set of conditions. You know, but with a little planning and advice, okay, a little bit of broader thinking, we can solve this limitation and become more versatile. And versatility is what's going to give you airtime. So, you know, we're going to be integrating all these physical and intellectual, emotional skills to make it all together, and no one is a prodigy in the sport. You know, we usually disown the one thing that we're weak in. You know, if you won't crack open a book, boy, when at times to be strategic and be a critical thinker at high flight, you're going to be just as dangerous if you decided not to focus on the physical skills. So, with that, I want to plug my Flight Concepts video textbook right here that all my students do use in conjunction with the training manual, and it provides a complete complement to what you're getting in terms of the information from your instructors and from your book, and it's all done with video examples of all the topics. Okay, so here's an example of the opening page of the Google Classroom Flight Concept video textbook. Now and then I post new articles and new videos illustrating certain topics pertinent to learning how to hang glide, and it's all organized within this rubric of even starting as with the paperwork and the legalities involved, the physics involved, construction and engineering of the glider, even radio use. Remember, communication is what it's all about. If you can communicate, or your instructor can give you instructions while you're having a lesson, that's going to enhance your program. Of course, this introductory ground school is CAN there, and of course all the steps required to learn how to hang glide, including keeping wings level on launch, step 1, and then of course level 2, straight and level flight, which gives you your hang 1, and of course you can practice your beginner 1 hang 1 tests, getting you ready for the official test through your instructor. And of course, risk management, and risk management is a really important one that we often give short shrift to, but I have exams there for you to understand all the pitfalls in a flying career. And then of course we get to turning flight and then mountain flight, okay, and of course your hang to novice test, and even mentoring. So I highly recommend that you subscribe to this. I'll provide a link at the bottom of the video, and subscribe for it for the length of time that you're in the program, and I'm sure it's going to provide a wonderful supplement to what you're getting at your certified school. Okay, let's start with the contributions from the Germans Otto and Gustav Lundvall. And there they were about 10 years before the Wright brothers, studying the black turkey vultures, doing airfoil design, doing experiments, writing it all down in research journals and books. And because of their research, the Wright brothers were then able to create and extend their research to create the airplane. Now, the first use of an airplane, okay, was sold to the military. And whenever the military gets a hold of something, it takes the fun out of it. And so if skateboarding had a military application, it'd be way different, right? And so that's exactly what happened to the airplane. So flying by foot launch flight and gliding, that all went by the wayside. And so now we have to fast forward to the space race with the Russians. They had a dog and man in space already. Our rockets were exploding on the launch pad. And, millions of dollars were thrown at science and engineering STEM. Couple million thrown at Francis Rogallo here to create a steerable, flexible wing to bring down our spacecraft. Now, it was great. It worked. He published it in various magazines, and people like J.D. Warner figured out some of the physics involved, and Richard Miller even said, I think I can make a bamboo plastic duct tape version of that in Southern California in like 65. But still, that can't be called hang gliding, because what really is a hang glider is the marriage between the control frame, the triangle underneath the Rogallo wing, and the Rogallo wing. And who has to be given credit for that is John Dickinson, an Australian water skier. You can see him with his skis here being towed behind a flat kite, behind a boat and a flat kite, and then they would release, and then they would kind of flutter down to a semi-controlled crash in the water. And he had the genius of saying, hey, if we connect this Rogallo wing to this control frame, this should be a steerable aircraft. And so he would release, and he would have total control over pitch, roll, and yaw, and he would no longer crash. And so spectators start coming, and so Bill Bennett and Bill Moyes, fellow Australians, saw this and borrowed the wing from him because he didn't patent it, and said, let's take this to the United States and make $1 million and make a sport out of it. So there's Bill Bennett and Bill Moyes in the United States promoting the sport, doing things like flying around the Statue of Liberty, getting all this media attention. And that's when I saw, and the rest of America saw, this grand old thing that people were doing. And that was the beginning of hang gliding. Okay, let's step back now to the Lilienthal brothers in 1895. They were very interested in creating a flying machine. They saw that their best bet was probably to mimic nature. And so, they studied turkey vultures in particular, and the black turkey vulture, because it seemed like it wasn't using its wings in a flapping manner so much, so that it seemed to be a good candidate to mimic. Now, these birds, Darwin has already published, they knew these birds were evolved by millions of years to fly. But despite all that evolution, they still made mistakes. I've personally seen birds make mistakes in the wild and actually kill themselves. I'll tell you stories about that later. But the Lilienthal brothers realized that all the prior attempts at creating a flying machine were too rash. See, people were developing high concepts of flying machines and then telling their butlers to jump off high towers, and they knew that they couldn't be successful with that kind of approach. So their approach actually involved breaking up the task into 3 areas. And this is the most important idea of this whole ground school. Really, if you don't remember anything, please remember this, because this is what's going to allow you to have a very smooth career in hang gliding. And we use it every day, and not only this sport, but actually other sports like scuba diving or horse riding or being an astronaut. You can generalize this idea into many realms that are cool, that require a helmet and in an alien environment. Okay, so what are the 3 areas? Here they are. Incremental equipment. The Lilienthal brothers didn't create their flying contraption all at once. What they did is they cut up the problem into parts and did testing, design, and data collection in each part. Okay, or in hang gliding and in this ground school, I'm going to present only one part of the hang glider, and that's called the down tube. Okay, that's going to then provide some sort of function for you. Okay, and in terms of the big picture, of course, incremental equipment would mean only flying the glider that's designed for your skill level, whether it be beginning or intermediate or advanced. So incremental equipment. Second, incremental skill training. If I asked you to use your body underneath the hang glider the way I'm doing it, you would be totally overwhelmed by all the interacting components of all your body parts to actually perform that. You'd be totally overwhelmed and get all frustrated and think, oh, I suck at this. Okay, so incremental skill training. Okay, and the last thing, how those two things interact with the weather conditions or the conditions. Okay, because remember, this is generalized. This could be any alien environment, whether it be water or space. But incremental conditions meld with your equipment and your skills in such a way to provide either a great experience or the worst experience of your life. Let me use a definite example that maybe you're familiar with. Everybody knows something about how water works, or a pond of water, and how a canoe works. So you don't have any hesitation getting in a canoe, and then something about how the oar works, and oaring right to that buoy right in front of the canoe. It's not a problem. Now let's up the conditions a little bit and put a little chop in the water. Now it takes a little bit more skill to get to that buoy, straight ahead. See, we had to up our skills for the conditions. Now let's look at a river. Now, a river, boy, has a few rapids in it. It would probably fill pretty quickly with water. So let's switch to a kayak that's more adapted to that environment, see? And then you look at some river environments, say like, the Great Rapids just before Niagara Falls, you'd realize that the kayak wouldn't cut it either, okay? So you can see the interactions between skill, the equipment and the skills and the conditions. And we have to teach you how to discern those three components in your flying career. Okay, so why do we have to teach you these three areas? Well, it's because accident analysis has shown that mishaps occur, or even incidents occur, because there's a confounding between these three areas. Never is it solely one reason why a mishap happens. And so you have to be able to recognize those three areas and possible ways you're creating too many of these factors to exist in your particular flying situation. So for instance, to stay out of those areas of increased risk, when they're kind of like intersecting, unfamiliar physical skills and weather conditions and unfamiliar equipment, okay, we need to be part of a rigorous curriculum, a curriculum that teaches you how to recognize those areas. And there's got to be a process of kind of like a slow, stepwise fashion of learning skills, okay, where you can make mistakes, but those mistakes are inconsequential. Okay, you have to be able to make mistakes in hang gliding in order to learn, but the thing is, they have to be at a lower enough level so that you can learn from them and not be so consequential that you quit the sport. So only one new factor at a time is the golden rule in hang gliding, and basically learning any kind of risky sport that involves technical equipment, technical skills in an alien environment. Okay, so we'll end here for this part of the ground school. Next time, we're going to remind you what to expect in your learning progression, including acceptance of your spurts of learning, your plateaus, and your pits. And then we'll remind you of what Lilienthal accomplished and how you're trying to accomplish the same thing. And then come to compare the airplane physics of control with what Lilienthal accomplished, and then solve how a hang glider accomplishes the same thing but with different physics. But it does it so that you feel like a bird. And finally, we'll go over how a glider flies at different bar positions, a thing called flying speeds. Okay? See you next time.